Hi, I'm Jessica, and when I'm not drinking all the coffee, watching Razorback sports, or hanging out with my family of boys, it's my passion to help elementary music teachers just like you find your unique teaching style. My goal with this podcast is to share helpful tips, strategies, and to give you the motivation you need to gain momentum in your teaching so you can continue being the music teacher rock star you already are. Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. Today is another amazing interview that I cannot wait for you to listen to. Today's interview is with Jessica Dutton, who is a fellow Northwest Arkansas resident, and we're going to talk about how to transition from teaching classroom music to owning a private teaching business. And this is something that I wanted to bring her on to talk about because I know there are music teachers who transition out of teaching in the classroom for one reason or another. Life sometimes throws you curveballs, or maybe you end up, wanting to have a family and you want to go a different direction and teach private lessons instead of in a classroom, or maybe your school shuts down or whatever it might be. This conversation is just centered around the fact that it's okay to have multiple facets to teaching music, not just in a classroom, but privately, how to own your own teaching studio or how to transition online or anything along those lines. So Jessica is a former public school music teacher who turned private teacher and music studio owner and manager. She's also a writer, speaker, business coach, and serial entrepreneur. She juggles these pursuits with her Spanish teacher husband while raising 3 kids under 5. She specializes in equipping music teachers with the encouragement, direction, and practical tools they need to build a successful business that fits their life and goals. You can find her on Instagram or Facebook at Music Business Mom, or in her Facebook group, Music Teacher Business Launchpad. So I can't wait for you to listen to this interview, so let's go ahead and get started.
So as you heard from her intro, this is Jessica Dutton, and I'm actually going to let her tell you a little bit more about herself before we get started. So Jessica, what do you want everybody to know about you?
Oh, goodness. Well, I am a music teacher. That's kind of, my trade. And I started out in the public schools. And since then, I've transitioned into teaching privately and running a multi-teacher music studio. And now I'm branching out into business coaching to help other music teachers build their own entrepreneurial journeys.
That's amazing. I love that. So it's a really funny story. Me and Jessica were talking before I hit record, and she and I have kind of found out about each other online. But ironically, we both live in Northwest Arkansas. But yeah, it's just so cool how you can just form connections online with other musicians and online music teachers or in-person music teachers. And I know you've been doing a whole social media challenge. I just saw about that. And so have you met so many people just online that you would have never connected with if it hadn't been, for online reasons, right?
Yeah, really and truly. And it's just such a blessing to be like doing anything, but I think especially trying to run a business in this day and age. And as a music teacher, as someone who there aren't a lot of other people doing the same thing you're doing, whether you're in the classroom or you're in the private studio, the internet brings together so many people who have expertise and talents and skills. And I just feel blessed to have access to so many great minds and personalities.
Oh, I agree completely. So I got my music ed degree back in 2004. And I always tell the music teachers I talk to now, I just don't feel like they realize how lucky they are today. I mean, we are too, but back in the day, I didn't have any online connections. I didn't even know how to connect with people online. I think Facebook, I don't know when it was founded, but it wasn't huge. And so we would just, form connections by email or in person. And so I just think it's so cool nowadays how just connecting with other people online is a thing. I mean, I think that's so awesome.
And, I Facebook came out when I was in college, and I remember like at that time, it was just a way to like keep up with your friends, but the power that it's given us as entrepreneurs and as humans, like, like connecting with my family that live far away that I would never see. And I don't know, it's an exciting time, I think.
Yeah, totally. All right. Well, girl, I want to ask you, you started you're like right out of college, right? As an elementary music teacher. Is that how you started?
I did. I had taught privately and I directed a church choir during college. And then during college, I had wanted to do secondary music, but I had this really great experience with an elementary music teacher. And she said, my passion is converting choir teachers into, like people who think secondary music is the only place where real music happens and showing them what great stuff happens in elementary music. And she did. Like, I was so amazed that all the things that were possible with elementary music. So after college, that's where I started out.
That's awesome. That's so funny. I don't think I've ever told anybody this about me too, but in college, I kept telling everybody, no, I'm just going to be a band director. That's all I'm going to be. I just want to, and I play piano too, but I did band and orchestra all the way through college, and I'm just going to be a band director. That's all I kept saying. And then elementary music, yeah, it just kind of fell in my lap. And then I was like, oh, wait, I like this more than I ever thought I would.
Yeah, same. I was a music snob, and I thought, well, I'm gonna direct this elite high school choir, and then I'm gonna go on and I'm gonna be a professional choral conductor. Which are great dreams and aspirations, but other plans, and I got really inspired about what could happen in the elementary classroom.
Yeah, I feel like even we talk about how people that are not musicians or not music teachers have a misconception of what happens in an elementary music classroom, but I even feel like for us going towards our degree, even,
oh, absolutely.
I feel like we do too,
And some of it is our own experience, as students in the classroom, depending on what kind of quality of education we had at that level. But, for me, music making started in choir and band. Mm-hmm. Like, I have some really vague memories, like we would do a program here and there, but like that's when music making started. So I didn't really have a perspective on what exciting and cool things could happen way before then.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes total sense. And and thinking back to my elementary music teachers, I didn't have one of those that's just like stuck out to me where, people will be like, oh, that elementary music teacher is what made me want to teach music. I had the opposite effect. They made me want to run for the hills because one of mine was like blowing or whistling our ears and
no,
I was like, this is not good.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it makes or breaks the experience. And part of that's just the tools that they have, like what are they equipped with and what resources do they have to make it a positive experience?
Totally. That's awesome. Well, okay. So what I want to talk to you about today is, so you have taught elementary music and you've done that. And I feel like this happened to me too. I remember being in college, and although I started as a piano performance major and then switched to music education, I still felt kind of conflicted, like, well, but I still have dreams to teach private lessons. I still want to play piano, but I still want to teach kids. I still want to this. And I feel like, it's probably for any music degree, but I feel like it's hard to know when you graduate, can I do all these things, or how do I transition if I don't want to keep teaching elementary music, for the rest of my life?
Yeah.
So I would love for you to just go into that a little bit. How did you decide to start your own music teaching studio and how did you just decide to do that? I'd love for you just to expand on that.
Yeah, well, and that's so true. And I will say that I think those decisions are not necessarily a lifelong commitment. When I was in college, I looked at, I'm going to be, when I finally decided on elementary music like that, that was kind of all I saw in my future. And getting into it, I realized there's a whole lot of life to live, and there are going to be some seasons where that's what I'm doing. And maybe I'll go back to it at another season, but there are going to be other seasons where, other things are happening. And so I'm in one of those other seasons now. I taught elementary music. I taught public school music for 7 years. The last 4 years was a middle school, but it was 5th grade. So I taught 5th grade only at that school.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes. So I know some districts that's elementary, some it's middle school. So it was kind of just a different position there. But then that last year, my son was born, and I finished out the school year. But he was a tough baby, and we just decided that it was going to be better for me and him and all of our sanity probably if I, did something different. But I didn't want to give up my career totally. I didn't want to lose the skills that I developed. I didn't want to get, I guess, complacent with that. I wanted to still have an outlet for those skills that I had developed. And I wanted to give my son a musical experience. So I looked around at different curriculums and programs for early childhood music programs. And I settled on Music Together, which is an international program for early childhood development, really based in the research and just fit a lot of my philosophy. And it wasn't really being done much in the area that I was at. So I decided to start a little center doing that. And I built up a few classes. And that's really where it started from was that program. And that's a lot of where my passion lies. I had done private lessons before, but I wasn't really passionate about it. And so I didn't really want to take on private students until we needed some more money.
Yeah.
Just to be honest, we got to a point
right.
where when my second son was born, we had a lot of hospital bills. My husband tried working because he's a teacher as well. And so he started working some after school jobs, and it was just a lot of stress on our family. And I said, I have this skill set. Maybe it's not what I want to do, but I'm going to go do that because it's what we need. And in that process, I came across, through the power of the internet mostly, some fabulous resources that helped me, sort of like I transformed my understanding of elementary music to transform my understanding of piano pedagogy and what the private lesson experience could be like, so that it was inspiring and fun for me. And I built a little piano studio off of that, and then decided that there was a need for more piano teachers, more than I could teach in our area. And so I started bringing other teachers on and built our studio from there.
That's so awesome. No, seriously, I'm just so impressed, because it's hard enough to just say, I want to teach private lessons or to start an early childhood music center like you have, but to be able to run a whole business around it and everything, it's just so incredible that I'm just really impressed by it all.
It really is a whole other skill set. The business side of things, it's a skill set that we're not, as music majors, typically equipped with. And so it's something that I had to do a lot of digging and a lot of learning because I had kind of a good instinct, I think, for business, but I didn't have a lot of specific knowledge and tools. And so that's sort of what I'm doing in this phase of doing some business coaching for music teachers who want to start this journey, because I've had to dig through a lot of that and unpack it and translate the business speak into what works for our type of field.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, because even when I started my own business a couple years ago, it's a lot of self-teaching yourself, because we don't know. I mean, it is something that you're not trained, obviously, because if you're getting a music degree, unless you're doing like music business major or something like that, you're not getting business training. And so whether you're running a business in person or online or a combination of both, it is definitely even, I'm pretty like, I pick things up quickly, but golly, it is like one of those learn as you go things that you just.
It is. And it's overwhelming. And there's so much so many resources out there, really, that you're having to weed through what's good and what's relevant to you and find out how to apply it. And there's a lot of trial and error and just trying to find out what works for you and what you can manage. For me in this phase of life, I have 3 kids under 5 right now.
Oh, wow.
And so balancing, not only running the business and the admin side, but providing the service and also running the marketing and getting all of that in place as well. So you have to be able to balance it all.
Oh, totally. Okay. So I like what you said earlier, that when you have a degree, I think music teachers think, well, I have this music education degree, so I have to teach music. That's what my degree is in. I've known so many people who get degrees in so many different things and end up not even using that particular degree because they end up following their passions to do something else. But one thing I love that you said was, just because you're doing this right now, think like everything can change. It doesn't mean you're never going to go into the school again. It may mean you don't ever go back into the school again. But I love how that you're encouraging teachers that they have options, that they, even if they're in the classroom right now and they want to shift out, that's okay. And then if they do that and they want to go back later, they can. And I love how you encourage teachers that it's okay to do that. And that's okay to have multiple passions, besides just teaching in the classroom.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll be honest, I loved teaching classroom music, and I felt like it was, a place I was supposed to be. But I also felt a little stuck because I do have, now I'm starting to realize now, this sort of entrepreneurial spirit. Like I like to start projects, and I like to have big ideas and dream those big ideas, and then figure out the pieces that work to make them happen. And and in a lot of ways, I wasn't able to do that in the classroom, but I also didn't feel equipped to do anything else because that's what I had studied for. That's what my certification was. And it was a safe place. So I think the journey of trying something different and, having to see it through and seeing that it can work has also opened me up to a lot of other possibilities, like things that I thought like, oh, like maybe I should write a book someday, or maybe I should design a curriculum someday. Like now I see them as real projects that if I want to, I can choose to tackle.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've probably heard this too, but I've had so many people say, oh my gosh, I could never do what you're doing. It'd be so overwhelming. And I wouldn't even know where to start. And I don't know how to, all the things. Well, here's the thing with this podcast. I didn't know the first thing about having a podcast,
right.
Writing a blog. I didn't know how to write a blog. I didn't know how to start a website. I didn't know how to, every single thing you could think of. I had the same thoughts. And then I feel like it's just with anything in life, I've given this example. When you start teaching in a music classroom, your first year teaching, let's just be completely honest here, you don't know what you're doing.
Yes.
What I like to tell other teachers is, but it's about, you'll learn more by doing than just by learning. You can learn all the things in college, but until you get in there and just are forced to do it on your own. I don't like to use the word force, but you know what I mean by that.
Right.
You
have to do it.
Right. That you learn what to do. And it's the same thing with, when you change things up and run your own business and start your own music studio, you learn just kind of, okay, well, that didn't work. Let me change this up, or I need to do it this way. And it's just learning as you go. Do you feel like that's kind of happened to you?
Absolutely. And you just take those. Yeah, exactly. You take those baby steps, and sometimes you have the end point in mind and sometimes you don't necessarily, but, you can't get anywhere unless you take the baby steps. There's a business term, minimum viable product. And I have taken that to heart, that I just have to get something put together that, is the base of what I'm going to offer, and then start putting it out there and get feedback. And then you start tweaking it and fixing it and making it into what you ultimately want your ultimate product to be. But if you don't ever do the thing or take the first step, then you'll never get there.
Yeah, that's so true. It's so good. Okay, so let's say there's a music teacher listening to this and they're not ready to completely transition out of the elementary music classroom. They love what they're doing, which is awesome. We need elementary music teachers.
Absolutely.
But maybe they're wanting to start teaching part-time lessons, but they don't even know how to get started with that. How would you encourage them what first steps would you encourage them to do that, I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, I'd say, there are so many great resources available online. And, as a piano teacher, I found a lot of really great piano blogs, and that gave me a lot of information and resources that I could use. There's plenty of free stuff out there, lots of paid stuff as well, once you find what works for you. But like I said, it can be pretty overwhelming. So I do have a Facebook group called Music Teacher Business Launchpad. And I do a quarterly masterclass in there where we talk about different topics. We just did social media strategy. The next one we have coming up is going to be about kind of out of the box business opportunities. So ways that you can use your talents and skills in a way, so besides just classroom teaching, just to get some ideas flowing there. Mm-hmm. And so we do quarterly things in there. But I think connecting with people who are doing what you're interested in doing, and just seeing what they're doing and following them and getting some ideas. And then you just have to put something together to try. So if it's lessons, finding your first student and try it out and see if it fits for you. But if you don't try it, you'll never know if it's going to work for you.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good advice. I love that. Okay, so when you decided to make the leap from elementary music to doing something else, I know it probably had to be scary. Can you talk about your feelings that you felt when you decided to make the leap?
Well, I think the hardest thing was resigning my position.
Right.
Which really at that time, the additional teaching was more of like a hobby, and I had this kind of secret vision of it growing bigger, but really I was planning to be a stay-at-home mom. And so I think that made it easier than saying like, I'm going on this business venture. Like it was easier to say, I'm going to stay home with my son. Oh, and I'm going to teach on the side. And so it made it less of a commitment. And then like, just like you've said, we've made those baby steps and followed it along the path. But I think making that decision to turn in my or not to renew my contract for the next year, both for family reasons and for the business was the scary part. And it was exciting too, but I remember the last day of school, I just sat in my car and I was like, I'm not coming back here. It's a weird and scary feeling. It was a nice feeling, but and I miss it sometimes, but, it opened some doors for me. So it was taking that first step was a little bit scary.
Yeah, it is. Doing anything new is so scary. And, yeah. And so my story was like my school closed down and then
oh goodness.
yeah,
I didn't know.
yeah. And then it ended up burning to the ground in Tulsa.
Oh.
And so it was like, it's like when God shuts a door, I mean, he
right.
shut it,
or
like,
burns one down.
It was gone. Like, it was like, okay, you're never going back no matter what. But, and then we ended up moving here when I was pregnant with my second son. And so, yeah, I became a stay-at-home mom because I didn't have a job and I didn't want to get a job when I was pregnant because I wanted my husband to be able to transition into his new job without us both stressing about, we were still trying to sell our house and find a new house. And there was just so many things involved and ended up finding out our oldest has autism and it just was all the things. But once you're a musician and you have that passion and you have a drive and you have, whether it's for music education, whether it's for teaching kids in person or starting your own music business, you have the skills you need to teach. You're a teacher and you're always going to be a teacher. It might just change it up and look in different kinds of forms. What I'm trying to say is it'll change up over time and it's okay. I think teachers just have a mindset of, sometimes, not everybody, but if I'm not teaching in the classroom, then I'm not really a teacher anymore. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's just so not true. You can teach other teachers. You can teach kids private lessons. You can teach kids online. You can teach in person. It comes in multiple different formats. And so sometimes life will throw you curveballs. I know of several teachers who have gotten let go or their music position just gets cut and then they're just kind of like, well, what do I do? So I love how you're offering different ways and encouraging teachers that it's okay to have different passions and that there are other ways to still follow your passions and to, still teach and still to run a business if you would like to do that. I love that.
Yes. And I mean, those crossroads, I think are really just an opportunity for some self-reflection about, when you're having to make a decision, am I going to apply for teaching jobs in this new area? It gives you a chance to think like, is this what I want to do? Is this really where I want to be? Is this the right place for me in this season of our life? And teachers have so many skills and talents. And as classroom teachers, all of those are lumped into your one job. And there's have to develop as a classroom teacher, like the interpersonal skills, the teaching skills, the talent in your subject area, the administrative skills that you do. And just realizing that those are not just limited to the classroom. And I know, as someone who I came from a family who struggled financially, the security of having that monthly paycheck, was a big factor for me in staying when I didn't necessarily feel like it was maybe the best fit for me. Mm-hmm. And so having that experience of having to say, oh, like, what if I try something different? It was scary to let go of that security. And it has, definitely been scary in that sense at times, but it's also a lot of freedom and a lot of opportunities. And as we talked about, so many great opportunities online, to build passive income, to build businesses that you can work around your family and around your personal needs. Like I just think that teachers have the skills to do it if it's where their passion is and what they want to be doing.
Right. And just like we talked about with taking baby steps, it's not just taking baby steps in, like when we talked about being in the classroom, it's taking baby steps every year and every month you're learning something new to do in your classroom. Well, the same thing with running an online business. And it's not just the baby steps, like we talked about with starting a business, you're learning all the things of what to do, but the income side of it too, it is scary and it's hard to figure out, how do I do this? And you don't want to sound too salesy and and online, it's just like with your students and your colleagues, it's about forming relationships. And that's been a big part of it for me, is just forming relationships and just getting to know other, teachers, and providing free content and free value. And I feel like that's a big part of it too, but taking baby steps and knowing that if you're following your passion, the money will follow because people will see that you're passionate about it. Have you found that for yourself too?
Yes, absolutely. And I think classroom teachers have, this philanthropic heart, right? They're there not necessarily for the paycheck, but because they love kids and they want to share that music. And I know my husband, he's a teacher as well, and he also runs a TPT store, so
Okay,
he's
yeah.
starting to get into the business side as well. And, and he's looked at some other teaching opportunities, and it's really hard sometimes to let go of that. But I'm helping so many students
Mhm.
here. And there's so much value in that. But it's not the only place you can help students. Sometimes you help students by helping teachers be better teachers on a broader scale. And sometimes you help students by like in my case, I offer a lot of scholarships, a lot of financial aid for people who request it, who wouldn't otherwise have access to those musical experiences. One of my big goals is to start a nonprofit where we're able to underwrite a lot more of our services. But again, it's baby steps. And so yes, there's the business side, and there is sales, and there is, like generating income for your business, but there is still that passion and heart behind it. I think music teachers who have a passion for what they're doing can infuse that into the work that they're doing as an entrepreneur.
That's awesome. Well, Jessica, do you have anything else for someone who is thinking about, or maybe they've been having these thoughts for months or years even, about, I would love to transition out and start my own music teaching studio, whether it's an early childhood or a private teaching studio? Do you have any advice for maybe let's talk about the brick and mortar side of it. How do you find a teaching space? How do you go about doing that? Do you have any advice for these teachers that, or maybe that's why they haven't taken the jump yet, because they're wondering about all those things?
Yes, yeah, that's a big step. And I will say that I ran mine as a mobile studio for about 2.5 years, so that I had a general idea of what my income would look like before I signed a lease. So in the first few years, I was renting space from existing businesses to run my business. And then once I did that, I found the right space at the right time, the stars aligned and all of that, and it worked out. So if you can start to build a little bit of a client base first, then that helps you to number wise know what you can take on in terms of a physical location. If you want to, if you are going to do a bigger scale project, then you really need to sit down and look at the numbers and say, if this is my rent, if this is my overhead, how many students do I need? How many class spots do I need to fill? And go in and crunch the numbers, because, even though there is the heart and passion side behind everything you're doing, if you can't keep the doors open, then you can't provide the service. And that's something that I've had to come to terms with, is that, when I'm pricing things and I think like, I wish I could make this more affordable for my families. But when I look at the numbers, that's what I have to charge to keep the doors open.
Right.
And so the choice is, the service is available or the service is not available. And, so you have to make some tough decisions like that in terms of the numbers, but you do have to be able to look at it from a business standpoint and not just the feel good side as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As a music teacher, you're wanting to just, like you said, help as many families as you can, because some of these kids, they just need it. But like you said, you have to think of it from a business standpoint. And I love that you said that, because that's so hard, isn't it?
It is. And that's one of my passions with working with music teachers, because a lot of music teachers get into, the business side as a hobby, or they don't look at it from the business mindset to start with. And so they end up in a place where it's not really profitable, or it's not really, functioning well for them. And they kind of get stuck there. And if you can start thinking about it as a business and with some of those business tools from the front end, then you can set yourself up for success, and not just financial success, but success in being able to reach more people with a long running sustainable program.
I love that. That's awesome advice. Well, Jessica, do you have any closing thoughts before we go today? You've given so much helpful advice today that, man, it's just awesome. And I know my listeners are going to get so much value from this. But before we go, do you have anything else you would like to add?
Oh, I'm so glad it's been helpful. My biggest thing is just finding your passion and where you are right now. If you are totally on fire about what you're doing, then keep it up. If you feel like maybe there's something missing, maybe you haven't found your place where your talents and skills align with your passion and your work, then I love to do a brain dump and just think of all the things that if there was nothing stopping me, that I would do with my time and talents, and just write all of that down and see where your passions really lie and start exploring some of those and see what options might be out there for you.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good. Well, thank you so much. I have really enjoyed this interview, and I just love how it's different than some of the interviews I've done, because I know I get a lot of questions about this too, I don't know if I want to teach elementary music for the rest of my life.
Right.
And so I just think this is a conversation that's been needing to be had for a while. And so I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. And
thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure to talk with you. I feel like, like we've kind of known each other online, so it's fun to actually have a real conversation.
I know, right? Well, I appreciate it. And thank you so very much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for listening in to the Elementary Music Teacher Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And while you're there, I would love for you to review the show and leave a rating on iTunes. To find out more about how I can help you gain momentum in your elementary music teaching career, head to thedomesticmusician.com, where you'll find free downloads, courses, the blog, and so much more. Continue teaching music and never doubt the impact you're making each and every day in the lives of your students.